In a world where orderliness is often equated with productivity, it might come as a surprise that a person with a tidy desk and well-organized documents might lack creativity. However, upon closer examination, it becomes evident that the desks of successful people tend to be messy, challenging the conventional belief and suggesting that chaos and a disorganized style might stimulate creativity and lead to greater efficiency. This might not sound profound, but I've summarized some interesting points for you. Number 1. Focus and ADHD. My subscribers, you for example, may be most concerned about one question: how to get things done well. Some might argue this is too pragmatic, and we should care more about democracy issues in East Asian countries. We do care, but we are doers first, not talkers. Within the realm of Zen Buddhism, two contrasting notions of enlightenment emerge: gradual and sudden. Similarly, when exploring the methodology of Thomas Edison, one encounters a fusion of relentless hard work and elusive inspiration. In the field of psychology, deliberate practice intertwines with the enigma of genius. While the former emphasizes dedicated effort, the latter remains shrouded in a captivating aura of mystery. These diverse perspectives shed light on the multifaceted nature of achievement, revealing a fascinating interplay between persistence and the inexplicable. Over the past decade or so, various studies, articles, and books on getting things done have emphasized the importance of hard work. For example, we might be familiar with the following ideas. Focus. The human brain is not suited for multitasking. We should only do one thing at a time. Self-control. Being able to control oneself and do what needs to be done when it needs to be done is more useful than intelligence. Power of habit. Forming habits to do the right things makes them less painful. Minimalist lifestyle. To focus on important things, we must eliminate all unnecessary distractions, and etc. These ideas are great. I dare say that if someone can achieve all of the above, their work and life quality will surpass most people. More importantly, these ideas debunk our superstitious pursuit of genius and inspiration. Waiting for inspiration to strike is not as effective as diligently studying and practicing. However, you must also admit that these methods have a mechanical quality to them, seemingly more suitable for learning and executing tasks. Master artists, scientists, and decision-makers in any field must have something else beyond these skills. And today I am exactly going to be focused on this something else. The philosophy behind this something else is entirely different, but it is not mysterious and can be studied and learned. A study at Harvard University selected a group of college students, not ordinary students, but Harvard students, to test their distraction resistance. In other words, if you were chatting with someone in a noisy restaurant, could you focus on the conversation without being distracted by the surrounding noise and activity? Some students had poor distraction resistance. The slightest disturbance would cause them to lose focus. However, the study found that these individuals had stronger creativity. Among these Harvard students, some had published novels, written and produced plays, received national reviews, and held patents. According to these hard indicators, 22 out of 25 highly creative students had weak or relatively weak distraction resistance. Another study found that adults with ADHD were more creative than average. They were more likely to achieve the feat of having their poetry published in the New Yorker magazine. A master avant-garde musician, Brian Eno, is practically unable to concentrate. Further research has shown that deliberately causing confusion and encouraging mistakes before a creativity test can actually enhance participants' creativity. This is fascinating. Perhaps, at least when you're at the level of a Harvard student, being distracted can be beneficial for creativity. What is the principle behind this? Number 2, the mountain climbing theory. In 2014, a major strike by London subway workers led to the closure of 171 out of 270 subway stations, forcing commuters to find new routes to work. London has an electronic travel card that can be used on all public transportation facilities, so those who usually took the subway to work had to use this card to switch to buses. The system recorded all the vehicles used by this card, providing economists with a great research opportunity. Economists found that on the day of the strike, most passengers used different routes to work than usual. Interestingly, after the strike ended, not everyone returned to their original commuting routes. About 5% of passengers continued to use the new route they discovered on the day of the strike. In other words, the shock of the strike gave these people an opportunity to find better routes. We call this kind of shock an arbitrary shock, without careful planning, without a specific direction, just randomly and bluntly shaking you. This could be a great opportunity for innovation, and there is a particularly good theory to explain this phenomenon. Suppose there is a map, and you know nothing about the terrain on it, but if you report any location coordinates on the map, the system can tell you the altitude of that location. Your task is to find the highest possible mountain on the map within a limited time using this question-and-answer probing method. What would you do? The slowest method is to start from the top left corner of the map and ask one point at a time, but this is too slow. One method is to randomly select several points, get the altitude of each point, and keep asking as long as there is time left. When time is up, choose the highest point you encountered. This method is also inefficient and relies entirely on luck. Another method is to start from a point, examine the altitude of each point within 1 meter of it, choose the highest point, and then start from this new point and choose the highest point around it. This is actually a mountain climbing method. It ensures that you find a mountain near the initial point. The best method is to combine random point selection and mountain climbing. First, randomly select some points, find the highest point among them, and then randomly select points within a few kilometers of this point. Choose the highest point among them, and then start climbing from this point. Using this method, you may not be able to find the highest mountain on the map, but you can definitely find a relatively high mountain within a limited time, and if one of your initial points falls on the Tibetan Plateau, this method can ensure that you find the Himalayas. Isn't this how we choose our majors and jobs? When we choose a major in college, we consult many people's opinions, but essentially, there is a certain randomness to it, as no one knows the future prospects of all majors. You choose a seemingly good subject, then choose a seemingly good specific direction or workplace, and then you start climbing from that point. The same goes for any specific job. Choosing a point is choosing a job direction, and climbing is getting the job done. Climbing requires focus, willpower, and the hard work of deliberate practice. Choosing a point is a matter of luck and inspiration. Knowing only how to choose a point without climbing, and only knowing how to climb without understanding how to choose a point, are both inadequate. So what is an arbitrary shock? It's when you've reached the highest point on this mountain and there's nowhere else to go. At that moment, a shock comes and shakes you to another place. If you're unlucky, you might end up in a valley. If you're lucky, you might be shaken to the foot of an even higher mountain. If you've already become particularly good at climbing, isn't this a great opportunity? People engaged in creative work often face situations where there's nowhere to go. Writers may not know how to continue writing a novel, and scientists may encounter problems they don't know how to solve. This is when an arbitrary shock is needed. I've heard that science fiction writer Asimov would go to the cinema alone when he couldn't write anymore, and often after watching a movie, he would get a new inspiration. So whether it's distraction or arbitrary shock, it's actually about bringing some uncertainty to the creative process. And true innovators not only don't fear uncertainty, but they also constantly welcome and even actively increase a bit of uncertainty. I recommend Brian Eno, who has a very special approach. He makes cards in advance, each with a saying that seems like a proverb. Emphasize the shortcomings. Only want parts, not the whole. Look at the order in which you do things. Change the role of the instrument. He shuffles all these cards and puts them in a box. When he encounters a lack of inspiration during the creative process, he randomly draws a card from the box and asks the entire team to think about solutions based on the card's instructions. His collaborators initially disliked this approach because the card's instructions were often incomprehensible. But Eno forced them to do it. Over time, people found that sometimes this method could indeed bring magical power. For example, once the card's instruction was "Imagine you are a gardener," and the collaborator thought, "A gardener must let things grow, so can I add some growth elements to the music?" Many of Eno's classic works were made using these cards. Eno also said that distractions are actually conducive to focusing attention. Distractions allow you to notice new things, and new things may be the most stimulating, so you naturally pay attention to them. And systematically using arbitrary shocks has an even broader approach. Number 3, multi-peak work method. If you examine those particularly prolific and original thinkers, starting with Charles Darwin, they have one thing in common. They conduct research in several different fields simultaneously. Darwin is famous for his theory of evolution, but he was involved in many other areas, such as his lifelong study of earthworms. When he encountered resistance in researching other problems, his first reaction was to return to studying earthworms. Sometimes we can see a scientist conducting research in biology, chemistry, and mathematical physics, tackling the most difficult problems in each field. The beauty of this is that they can often quickly apply new ideas from one field to another, resulting in brilliant insights. Once, when faced with a difficult problem in one field, they had to set it aside and went to a conference to listen to a presentation. They accidentally entered the wrong room and ended up hearing about a problem in another field. They immediately applied the ideas from the previous field to this new problem, achieving a breakthrough. This is actually an example of an arbitrary shock. So I highly recommend trying this approach, having several different projects going on at the same time. Take myself as example. I am now a YouTuber, writing a biography of a celebrity, doing multiple research projects, and even learning roller skating. Each project has its own archive, where you can add new ideas as they come to you. I will usually work on the projects that can be done and leave the others for later. 4 benefits so far I've found to myself. First, different projects can complement and inspire each other. Secondly, switching between projects gives your brain a sense of novelty, making it easier to focus. Thirdly, while working on one project, my subconscious may still be paying attention to another, making it easier for sparks of inspiration to occur. Fourth, if I'm stuck on one project, I can temporarily set it aside and work on others. In my home, there's always a small whiteboard with more than 15 projects listed. I choose 3 projects as my main focus. Visitors to my home might find this chaos confusing, but it does ensure my creativity and efficiency for a long time. If you'd like me to continue sharing on how to achieve a much better version of ourselves in 100+ ways, please click subscribe. Your support and feedback will definitely make a better version of my works.